a story from the Bible about a young man in his teens, early, maybe late teens, called Samuel. Probably the same age as many of you who are watching tonight. This story took place around about 3,000 years ago, which kind of seems like a long time. Almost as long as COVID's been around. And yet, Samuel's story here is a story that can be told by lots of people ever since, especially since Jesus came, for reasons I'll talk about it a little later. The point is, this story is about God calling someone. And it's one that people throughout history can say is their story in a lot of ways. There are leaders that you know, leaders from here at EBC that would be able to say that this is their story as well. And more than that, what I'm about to describe, maybe you have experienced. And you didn't even realise that that's what was going on. You might even experience it right here, right now, as you're watching and listening to this talk. So what's the story? Well, it's from 1 Samuel chapter 3, verses 1 to 21. Just to give you some of the background, there's this boy called Samuel who worked in the tabernacle, which was kind of a big tent where God met his people back then. And Sam's boss was an old man called Eli, who was the high priest of the tabernacle. Part of Samuel's job was to take care of Eli because Eli was so old. Now this story, it takes place really early in the night time, just as everybody who works at the tabernacle is going to bed. So here goes. The boy Samuel ministered before the Lord under Eli, the high priest. Now in those days, the word of the Lord was rare. There were not many visions. One night, Eli, whose eyes were becoming so weak that he could barely see, was lying down to sleep in his usual place. The lamp of God had not yet gone out, and Samuel was lying down in the house of the Lord where the ark of God was. Then the Lord called Samuel. And Samuel answered, "Here I am." And he ran to Eli and said, "Here I am, you called me." But Eli said, "I did not call. Go back and lie down." So he went and lay down. Again, the Lord called, "Samuel." And Samuel got up and went to Eli and said, "Here I am, you called me." "My son," Eli said, "I did not call. Go back and lie down." I always feel like probably at this point, Samuel's saying, "Silly old guy," and Eli's thinking, "Silly little kid." Now Samuel did not yet know the Lord. The word of the Lord had not yet been revealed to him. A third time the Lord called, "Samuel." And Samuel got up and went to Eli and said, "Here I am, you called me." Then Eli realized that the Lord was calling the boy. So Eli told Samuel, "Go and lie down, and if he calls you, say, 'Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening.'" So Samuel went and lay down in his place. The Lord came and stood there, calling as at the other times, "Samuel, Samuel." I reckon even by this point, God's getting a little frustrated. Then Samuel said, "Speak, for your servant is listening." And the Lord said to Samuel, "See, I'm about to do something in Israel that will make the ears of everyone who hears about it tingle." I'm going to skip a little bit ahead to verse 19. The Lord was with Samuel as he grew up, and he let none of Samuel's words fall to the ground. And all Israel, from Dan to Beersheba, which is kind of like saying all Adelaide from Noarlunga to Elizabeth, recognized that Samuel was attested as a prophet of the Lord. The Lord continued to appear at Shiloh, and there he revealed himself to Samuel through his word. There weren't many people getting visions from God or anything like that. In a lot of ways, I think that's a bit like our society. It feels like lots of people don't get experiences of God talking to them, or at least that our society doesn't put much stock in things like that happening. Most people just go through life and God just isn't a big part of it. The thing is, Samuel shows here that the reason people don't hear God talking might not be because he isn't talking. It might be that he is talking, it's simply that, well, they don't recognize his voice. Now, Samuel hears God's voice, but he doesn't realize that it's God speaking. I mean, he doesn't even think that that's a possibility. Why would he? I mean, no one's been hearing from God for years. And, that's just kind of one of those stories that our, grandparents or old guys like Eli tell us, from back in the good old days. So, Samuel can't tell that this is God's voice. And it's important to realize why he can't tell that. Because I think there are people who might tell you that you can't hear God's voice and give you some reasons for that. And I want to show you from this story that you can. You can hear God talk to you. Firstly, some people might tell you that you can't hear God's voice because you're not old enough. You're not experienced enough. Maybe you're a youth group kid and they're like, well, if God was going to talk to anyone, then he would talk to grown-ups and adults, the people who make the big decisions in life, and as if he'd waste his time talking to a little kid like you. Well, it's really obvious here that God doesn't care about whether you're a kid, teenager, young adult, old adult, whatever. He'll talk to you. In fact, there's a story in the New Testament of when Jesus was walking around and his disciples tried to stop some kids from coming up to him. And Jesus' response to that was really interesting. He got really cross, but he didn't get cross at the kids for coming and bothering him. No, he got angry at the disciples for stopping the kids from coming and hanging out with him. Right? I actually think that God has no problem talking to kids. So why did God talk to Sam? Well, why did Jesus want to hang out with the kids? I think it's because younger people are sometimes better at listening. You're used to listening. And you aren't afraid to listen when God wants to tell you to do something brave. And you're not afraid to do what he says, even when it's risky or amazing. I remember hearing a story told by an amazing youth pastor from Canada called Cara Overholt. Now, when Cara was about 15, her dad had made her go on a Christian camp. And she wasn't too keen to go, but hey, did what her parents told her. Anyway, one night, a bit like, even a night like this would be, so a worship kind of service. Obviously, they were all together, but you get the idea. They're all singing and all that kind of thing. And Cara got what she described as a God tap. It's like a tap on the shoulder from God. And what God told her to do, like she's just out in the seats, she got told by God, she felt, that he wanted her to come up to the front to the speaker who was waiting just down there to kind of come up and to pray for him. And she went, there is no way in hell that I am doing that. That is not happening. I'm just a kid and he's a leader. It just wouldn't work. anyway, this God tap just wouldn't go away. And she's trying to say, like, God, it's not God, it's just in my head. I probably ate too much pizza at dinner or something like that. But God just kept on tapping. God kept on tapping. So finally, she kind of gave in and she took this deep breath and she got out of her chair and she walked down and she went up to the guy and, like, very shyly, she went, hi, can I pray for you before you go up? And the guy kind of looked at her and was a bit stunned, and then he went, oh, sure, Cara, yeah, thanks. So she did, and she sat down, he went on the stage, and that was that. Now, the next day, the guy came up to her, and he said, you know, Cara, last night, I was actually feeling really nervous about the talk that I had to give. And then I got this sense that God was telling me, Cara Overholt is going to come up and she is going to pray for you. And that'll be your sign that everything's going to be okay. And he went, well, as if that's going to happen. She's a kid. There's no way that she would come up the front and do something like that. Would feel really weird. And so that's not going to happen. And then there you were. And how do you think that made Cara feel? She reckons that at that moment, she just went off and she prayed to God and she said, God, that is amazing. That made me feel amazing. And I am in. Okay, like from now on, what you want, if I get more of this kind of stuff, when I listen to you, I want more of this. I am in for whatever you want, right? God didn't care that Cara was a kid. He was more than happy to talk to her. More than that, he was actually more than happy to talk through her, just like Samuel. All she needed to do was have the courage to listen to that voice and to do what God said. Secondly, some of you might get told that you can't hear God unless you've been to church for a long time. For some of you, maybe you're a bit new to the whole Christianity thing. I don't know who's watching. Maybe some of you, you clicked the link because a friend of yours sent it to you and you've never really got into the whole Jesus thing at all. Well, you might be thinking that, well, it's only the good kind of real churchy people who God speaks to. Do you have to have hung around in church for years and years to even be able to tell? Well, I think this passage shows that it's not like that at all. Because Samuel is a church kid. The story takes place in chapter 3 of this book called 1 Samuel. Now in chapter 2, what you find is that Samuel's mum, Hannah, hands this little baby Samuel, when he's born, over to the temple to live his life as a kind of student within the temple, within the tabernacle. So the point is that Sam's been living in this tabernacle place his whole life. And it doesn't really help him out that much in terms of making him any better to hear God's voice. If he was a total rookie, a total noob, it would make absolutely no difference to how the story goes. Because whether he has heaps of XP points or total noob, he still had no clue what was going on. Right? You can't tell it's God's voice any better because you're a church kid. So why does he talk to you? Well, actually, that's pretty simple, because he made you. You were his idea. And when God made you for a reason. He made you the way you are to do a specific thing that only you can do for him. There is a job that God made you for that only you can do. Now, it'd be really weird if someone, like a boss or something, got someone for a specific job and then they never told them what that job was. That would be really strange. Well, same here. If God has made you for a purpose, sooner or later, he's going to have to start to show you what that purpose is, what that job is. And that's what he did here with Sam, isn't it? And actually, Sam gets a really cool job. God tells him that Sam's going to go out and tell God's news to the Israelites, to his nation, and that it'll make their ears tingle. I'm sending you, Sam, to tell them that. That's awesome. It's kind of scary, but it's awesome. I wonder what God is going to call you to do. Now, look, of course, what I'm saying can be done really badly. There are tons of people in history who've thought that God was calling them to do something really terrible, something that he most definitely was not telling them to do. Some of those things can be big, some of those can be small. There are nutbags who have thought God was telling them to start a cult or kill a bunch of people or that kind of thing. But there are also people who have thought God was saying that it was okay for them to date a complete jerk or to not do their homework the night before it was due. Right? Samuel shows it's hard to tell what is God's voice and what is something else. So how can you tell what is, when you hear that thing, how can you tell that that's God's voice or just something your mind is making up or whatever? Well, one way that this story shows for figuring out whether it's God's voice or not is found in the Eli part of the story. Eli's a Christian leader who's had God talk to him lots of times throughout his life. And so he recognizes what God sounds like. Now, if you go and look at the wider story of what's going on, Eli's a kind of messed up guy in a whole host of ways. His kids are complete tools. But he's still a pretty decent bloke in his way. And as I said, he knows what God sounds like. And I want to suggest that the leaders that you have as part of the EBC community, you could do far worse than go to them and talk to them about this stuff. Like I said earlier, they've had God talk to them lots and lots and lots of times. We all have. All of us who have leadership roles in one way or another. Right? So ask them their stories. Where was that time where God spoke to you? Right? Ask for their stories of their times, like their Samuel moments, their Kara moments. If you want, if you ever get the chance to talk to me, and you're more than welcome to, you can hear my stories about that. And the reason I know that they'll be able to tell you some cool stories is because God is speaking. God speaks to us all the time. See, that's because, like I hinted to at the beginning, things get so much more wild in this way once Jesus comes. In Acts 1 in the Bible, once Jesus has died and rose again, he's hanging out with the disciples, and then he told them he's leaving. He goes to be ascended, and they begin to freak out. But then he told them that he wasn't going to leave them alone, and that they, and indeed every other Christian after them, would receive in their hearts the Holy Spirit, God's Spirit, the Spirit of Jesus. And here's a passage about that. It's from John. I have much more to say to you, more than you can now bear. But when he, the Spirit of truth comes, he will guide you into all truth. He will not speak on his own, he'll speak only what he hears, and he will tell you what is yet to come. He will glorify me, because it is from me that he will receive what he will make known to you. And you know what? That's exactly what's happened. Jesus had also said that his Spirit would kind of start whispering into people's hearts, even sometimes before they became a Christian, calling them out, whispering, come, come. Even right here, right now. How did you come to click on that link? And I think right now, in the current kind of crazy situation that we find ourselves, there's something about that makes this the perfect time for God to speak to us. Perfect time for God to speak to you. So the question isn't whether God will speak to you, because he will. The question is, are you like Sam? Is God calling your name? Hello? Hello? I'm here. I have something to tell you. And are you ready to say, speak, Lord, for your servant is listening.
Used to be before creation, eternity in your hand. You spoke the earth into motion, my soul now to stand. You stood before my failures and carried the cross for my shame. We lay upon your shoulders, my soul now to stand. So what can I say? What can I do but offer this heart, oh God, completely to you? Welcome upon salvation. all stand. So I'll stand with arms high and heart abandoned in awe of the one who gave it all. And I'll stand, my soul, Lord, to you surrendered. All I am is yours. So I'll stand. And I'll stand with arms high and heart abandoned in awe of the one who gave it all. And I'll stand, my soul, Lord, to you surrendered. I am is yours. So I'll stand. I'll stand, arms high and heart abandoned in awe of the one who gave it all. And I'll stand, my soul, Lord, to you surrendered. All I am is yours. I'll stand. And I'll stand with arms high and heart abandoned in awe of the one who gave it all. And I'll stand, my soul, Lord, to you surrendered. All I'll stand. And I'll stand with arms high and heart abandoned in awe of the one who gave it all. And I'll stand, my soul, Lord, to you surrendered. All I am is yours. And all I am is yours. And all I am is yours. So what can I say? And what can I do? But offer this heart, oh God, completely to you.
The Master decided that his love was so great, we all had a choice to seek and follow God's way. Fulfillment in life and God's wonderful plan is being connected to God's over all our lifespan. A loving Creator finds a place in your heart, connects to the Master, our eternal chart. God's love never stops or sways, regardless of struggles and going a different way. Today or tonight, God is calling your name. He's saying, come, come and refresh your souls again. I just want to say thank you for tonight, and thank you for Matt, and particularly the theme and the message of the call of God. We've got a few basic principles, the call of God here. There's different ways of doing it through different, it depends on people and where they're at in life. But one of the things is to get involved in some of God's creation and look after creation. The second thing is social justice. We're very, very heavily involved in different programs here regarding helping the needy in our community and supporting them through food, people with disabilities, etc., etc. And we believe that through this, through service, God can reveal his call for your life and mine. A few shout-outs. I want to say a big shout-out to Ian Dunn, who's 80 years of age today. I'm probably dancing tonight. He's never danced in his life, but he's allowed to do it at this time. I know he's a good Baptist, but so am I, and I hope I can teach him some ways. A big call-out to Lee Berry, whose birthday was this week, and she keeps me in check every week. So this is to say thank you, Lee. I don't like being told, and neither do you. But anyhow, I want to say happy birthday. Any other big shout-outs from down the back there? No big shout-outs? No big shout-outs from here? Lewis is back to feet again this morning. He had his slippers on, the Ugg boots, which is Australian brand, and he's trying to advertise it against the competitions in America. No other big Wednesday night, 7:30 here. The crew will be here. It's more of a kind of a laid-back session, so come and join with us. So may God bless you this week, and may you bless others. Have a fantastic week, and thank you for joining us.